Hi, it's Jeff McFeeters in Lawrence, Kansas, landscape photographer with a Friday Freebies episode. Today involves an action for Photoshop to help you uh, guide your strategy for editing your photos. The inspiration for this came from the awesome Kelly Crowther from Colorado, who created this wonderful 21 ways to give feedback on a photograph. And it has these little items of kind of bullet points, and then on page 2 of this PDF document she takes that list and expands on each point briefly to give some ideas on how these items might impact a particular photo that you've made or that you're have been asked to critique for someone. Again, remember that these are not hard and fast rules, and the things that make photos appeal to us have a lot more to do with values and ideas that are difficult to put into a technical line item. So anyway, that will be available for you to download. Kelly's attribution is included in that, and you're free to use it for your own pleasure. Let me quit this. What that did for me was inspire me to take this series that I've been working on with demonstrating workflow techniques, and use it to create an action that I'm going to give you to set up some notes and to mark up an image prior and during your editing process in Photoshop to maybe protect or to guard against missing things, or being able to give some guidance as we edit the photo. So, I've been using this image that I took a week ago, and I brought it into Photomatics, and you can see it's a little bit cleaner in the Photomatics version, but it's still in its basically unedited state. So if I take that into Photoshop, I can see right away, well, there are things that bother me about the image. It's not quite vertical here, the Leaning Tower of Silos, and it's fairly flat, and the sky is lacking in some color and detail. So what I will do is go to my Notes Layers action set, and I created a separate action for each that kind of grouped the bullet points that Kelly came up with into different folders. So there's the framework notes layer, which is kind of an overview of the image and things I want to do, corrections, specific items that need fixing, cloning out, straightening, that sort of thing, and then enhancement notes. And I can run the whole thing by just clicking the master action here and playing it, and it creates this group of subfolders. There's the framework, corrections, and enhancements. It also sets up the brush with as a red marker, and I think it's about 30 points, and take the hardness up a little bit and maybe drop the opacity a little bit. I think I actually created a separate action for that. If I click this and play it, it does something to that. 50%. So I'll go into a layer, and this is the subject. You know, do I see the subject? Are there multiple subjects? Again, download the PDF and study her explanation of these separate points. But you know, this is my subject. But say I wanted to mark that up to remind me if I wasn't sure. If I had multiple subjects, I might, you know, S1, S2, S3 is kind of in order that I want them to be understood by the viewer. Sharpness, is there any issues with the sharpness? Leading lines, where are my leading lines? Are there anything, if there's nothing obvious, will I create them with the light? Like, you know, will I want to go something like this in here to kind of pull the viewer into the image? Focal point, how is this going to be edited to keep the viewer inside here and not sliding out? Is there anything on the, you know, in here that could be a problem, you know, like that. Exposure. I might make some notes here that just with some symbols that this area here, the exposure probably should come up a little bit, but up here I should probably drop the exposure some, and likely down here towards the bottom, depending on where I crop this, that could be a little darker, because right now it's brighter than the area here that I want people to be looking at. You know, the barn itself probably should have a little more exposure. Edge and border patrol. Well, you know, the biggest thing here is this area in here. That's definitely got to, you know, go. Composition and crop, very connected to that. Before you get too crazy with edge and border, you kind of maybe want to make sure that it's not going to be taken care of in the crop. I think if I went a 3x2 crop here, it would actually look better for the kind of subject I'm using. And camera settings. You can see your camera settings with the Command option or Control Alt Shift and then I, and that will pull up a panel on the image, and you can click on the camera data and study that. If you're unsure of something about the image, makes you want to check that and see, did I thought I shot this, you know, at ISO 200, but it looks like it was at 1600, you know, or something like that. So those are things to check. Again, you know, we can collapse, and we can even turn these notes off if we want. Go into corrections, check for spots, check for noise. Am I going to need to run denoise? I usually denoise early in an image, so if I see any noise issues, I'll want to note that. Lens corrections, is there anything happening with the ultra wide angle or something that I need to address? The horizon, is the horizon level? I can also include in here things like straightening the silo. Check for halos and chromatic aberration, and then any distractions. And sometimes a distraction is not really that significant in the image. It's strong enough that it can handle some distractions. You don't have to go crazy with this. In this image, just because there is going to be some need to separate foreground from background that's all green, things that could be confusing, or a slight distraction would be something like that. Also, if we zoom in here, we see that there are power lines running across here. So, you know, I want to take those out, right? So we don't want those in there. So those are some corrections. And enhancements. Here I'm basically asking myself, what kind of story am I going to be telling? And the thing I want to keep in mind with a scene like this, that's late summer evening, I want warm golden light coming in here. It's moving towards autumn. Special effects, if there's anything I see that it probably could use, is going to probably be a vignette you know, in some areas down here. Values and content, I'm going to be carefully watching my black point and white points, and if I see anything in here that needs a special address, like this is probably going to be my black point here, and this is probably up in here going to have my white point. Tonality, I'm going to be checking to make sure that my tones are realistic for a scene like this, and that the vibrancy and saturation doesn't get too crazy. Same thing with highlights and shadows. You know, I'm going to be carefully watching areas like this and like this and like this. I don't want this to get too bright. I don't want this area to get too bright. Color and HDR. Also related to the fact that I did combine these images, and I'm watching for you know, issues with over too much tone mapping going on, or something that's or maybe I want that, you know, maybe it's a grungy interior and I don't want it to be too bright. So those are things that I might make some notes on or comments or study. Just, you know, is it overall believable for the story I'm telling? Is what I'm doing to this image consistent all through the image? And then depth of field is sometimes minor but sometimes major. This could be something more of a nature image, more close, using a zoom or a telephoto that is compressing the distance between the subject and the background and maybe the foreground. And so I want that depth of field to be able to tell part of the story. And maybe I need to add a little more blur or softening in some areas to enhance that idea. Maybe I had to shoot at a narrower aperture than I would have liked because of the available light or something. Maybe I wasn't able to shoot at the exact settings that might have helped that story, and so I may need to edit some of that in the editing process, adding, you know, some bokeh or exaggerating the existing bokeh, or adding some clarity or dehazing, as you can in Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom, to decrease it a little bit. Maybe I need to pull some of the background in a little bit better because it's part of the story and it's a little obscure. So those are things where that comes in. So this action is free to download, and you can apply it on an image like this, and you can turn it off, go about your editing. Every now and then check back and see how you're doing, and or maybe at the end go through one more time and make sure, oh yeah, I was going to clone that thing out. I forgot all about these little branches, and I definitely still want to take them out. You know, or you may decide as you edit something that it's not an issue anymore. So those are just some guidelines to help you. And I found Kelly's list and bullet points to be really useful for me. It's not that an image has to be always seen technically, but when we get the technical aspects kind of out of the way, it allows our a more freedom to really look at it creatively and figure out really what the story and what we're trying to do with that image that we made. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, get back with me. I'm happy to help in any way, and I hope this is useful for you. Bye now.